head of the Reference Center for Behavioral Sciences and Mental Health of the National Institute of Health in Rome. And I'm involved in the Mentor Joint Action as well. So it's a great honor for me to open this discussion specifically dedicated to mental health. And we will event in this showcase event organized by HaDEA, which I thank a lot, with our joint action co-organizing this important synergy event. We will discuss the central topic of Synergy, which is integrated care, with two speakers, Dr. Florina Telea, head of the unit EU4Health grants of HaDEA, and Dr. Sibylla Neyman of the Riga Center of Psychiatry and Addiction Medicine. She is the project manager of the Joint Action Mentor, which is the acronym for Mental Health Together. Mentor, just a few words to say that Mentor just taken the first steps in September 2024, and is inspired on its goal and keywords by the comprehensive approach to mental health advocated by the European Commission in June 2023. We know that the topic we are going to discuss today, mental health, is a very hot topic in public health, and not only in public health, but from the perspective organization of the whole society. 1 in 6 people in the European Union suffered from a mental health issue just before the COVID pandemic, and the COVID pandemic has worsened the situation with a long-term impact specifically on mental health, in particular among vulnerable groups, such as children, the young, the elderly, and those with a pre-existing mental health condition. We have to consider that the world has rapidly changed in the past 5 years. It's strange to say that, but it is the truth, since we have witnessing climate change, environmental degradation, war and destruction in the European territories, and the worsening of a social and economic condition of a large part of European population. All these factors have further heightened the levels of anxiety and distress, specifically contributing to that, I would say, diffuse perception of the lack of hope in the future, which is affecting particularly young people. And this lack of hope, you can understand how much this increase predisposed to mental health disease issues and psychological distress and vulnerability to this sort of condition. In the face of this, the European Commission has set the comprehensive and prevention-oriented framework to mental health, but it's clear now that we had this consciousness before, but now it's particularly urgent to consider that mental health, it goes beyond the public health aspects and has to include other key areas such as employment, education, urban planning, culture, environment, the climate. This cross-sectoral approach put mental health on a par with physical health, and we like to repeat the WHO sentence: there is no health without mental health, which, well, it seems easy, but means a revolution, means that we have to consider mental health and well-being as a cross-cutting issue in a continuum from promotion, prevention, access to care, and finally, which is specific, possibly among not communicable diseases, a focus on recovery and social inclusion. In this sense, mental health can be considered the way forward, the integrated care for all not communicable diseases. Anyway, we are we have a hope in the future in this context, since the European Commission set up concrete actions benefiting citizens and health systems at country level, led by national authorities, stakeholders, but also we are witnessing the blooming of collaborative projects supported by EU4Health program, Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe, in collaboration with international agencies such as the WHO, the OECD, the UNICEF. Not to forget that we have the European community set out 20 flagships initiatives with important economical support in the area of mental health. Thus, the theme of synergies appears as particularly important, considering the body of initiatives promoted in the mental health area and the need to avoid unfruitful overlapping among different instruments. So questions arises as to whether to assure continuity between sequential joint action, as told yesterday, complementarity between parallel joint action, but also, and this, I think this should be a point of discussion, complementarity between different instruments addressed to research, such as Project in Horizon Europe, and instrument addressed more to policies, such as the joint action or the technical instrument initiatives, such as TSI. Well, so today, starting with a practical example of a joint action that had just begun, we will try to identify, if possible, best practices to build synergies between both similar and different actions, as well as between research and policies. Thank you very much. I give a step to Florina for the HaDEA point of view. Thanks.
Many thanks, Gemma. Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. And so I will give you a presentation from the EU4Health perspective in relation to mental health. So mental health is the projects related to mental health represents a growing part, or a growing share of our portfolio in HaDEA. And I'm very happy to be dedicating some time today to this very important public health issue. To start with, I would like to remind you all what is the WHO definition of mental health. So mental health is more than the absence of mental disorders. Mental health is a state of mental well-being that enables people to cope with the stresses of life, realize their abilities, learn well and work well, and contribute to their community. It is an integral component of health and well-being that underpins our individual and collective abilities to make decisions, build relationships, and shape the world we live in. So finally, mental health is a basic human right. As you will see from my presentation, all these elements mentioned in the WHO definition, they are reflected in the projects that we fund at HaDEA through the EU4Health program. So I'll now start displaying my slides. Okay, so what is the basis of the grant management in HaDEA? So as you know, there is a EU4Health program adopted by the Commission immediately after the COVID pandemic, and is the most significant, the largest health program ever adopted by the Commission. It has a high budget, 3.8 billion euros. This is allocated to HaDEA, but the total budget of the work program of the EU4Health program is 4.3 billion euros. This is after the cut of nearly 1 billion euro. But still, it remains a high budget allocated to the health policy. So it has five strands, as you see on the screen, with cancer as a thematic cross-cutting issue. Under the disease prevention, as you can see, mental health and neurological disorders is one of the represent one of the 4 diseases, together with cardiovascular disease, chronic respiratory diseases, and diabetes, that they are recognized under non-communicable diseases classification. In addition, health promotion covers initiatives tackling the 5 health determinants that are displayed on the screen. So how do we implement the work program? So via different funding instruments. My unit is dealing exclusively with grants management. And we have different type of grants, as you can see on the screen. So we have open calls for operating grants and open calls for action grants. These are competitive calls that we publish on our website and on a tender and funding portal, so allowing interested health stakeholders to apply. Then we have other type of grants, a bit more complex, joint actions and direct grants to member states. So here we have the beneficiaries can be only member states authorities. Then we also have direct grants to international organizations and direct grants to identify beneficiaries, specific beneficiaries. In this case, I gave you the example of European reference networks. Also important to know that for the EU4Health, it's a co-funding rate. The rule is 60%. And for exceptional utility cases, we can fund 80%. And in very, very exceptional cases spelled out by the EU4Health regulation, we fund 100%, like for example, in European reference networks. But there it's clearly spelled out in the Basic Act, in the EU4Health regulation. The rule is 60%, and sometimes we give 80% under the specific conditions laid out in the regulation. So just to give you an overview of the instruments. So now when we're moving to the core of the mental health topic that we'll be discussing today, you are all aware that in 2023, on the 7th of June, the Commission adopted a communication on a comprehensive approach to mental health. So with this slide, I would like to show you that some of the important areas highlighted by the communication are reflected in the grants that we manage and we fund in HaDEA. So as you can see with the arrows that I indicated in the slide, so one of the areas refers to children and young people. Another one refers to stigma. Another one is fostering mental health globally, and there the focus is on Ukraine because it's not an EU member state. Also, other area reflected in our projects is promoting good mental health prevention and early intervention for mental health problems. And also, last but not least, help for vulnerable groups, those that are most in need. Now, on the here with this slide, I would like you to basically to show you our portfolio of mental health grants. As you can see, HaDEA is currently implementing 20 action grants via the EU4Health program and 1 joint action mentor. And then also from the legacy, what we call the legacy is the 3rd health program. We also funded 1 joint action, is an implemental joint action, and 1 action grant with a 6.9 million euros. Those grants, they address different topics and different categories of beneficiaries, like for example, displaced people from Ukraine and migrants, also cancer patients and cancer survivors, youth relates to children and young people, and other are people affected by dementia and neurological disorders. And then, of course, the expected outcomes, they are listed on the screen. And also, I'd like to mention that there are also 3 procurement contracts for mental health. So the value is 9.7 million euros, but these are managed by a parallel unit in HaDEA. I'll give you now, let's take a closer look at the EU4Health projects that address the mental health. So these two first projects, they aim on boosting mental health in the post-COVID Europe. You see the total budget is 1 million euros. The first one, Mentality, has a coordinator, Mental Health Europe. And targets children, healthcare workers, vulnerable groups like people with pre-existing mental health problems and migrants. And then it develops a series of tools and best practices. Like, for example, for children, there is a story book, My Hero is You. This was developed to help people, to help children cope with the mental health issue they might have after or because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And also another best practice that I would like to highlight is the setting up of a help desk for Corona refugees. So if a refugee has Corona, then has a number and a help desk that he can call, he can use to get help. The other project is Step In. So the coordinator here is SOS Villaggi dei Bambini. And the focus, as the title can tell it, is on migrants and their children. So the children represent an important element of this project. The coordinator, as I said, this is Bambini, and then it uses a best practice developed by the WHO. It's called PM Plus to help migrants and their children coping with the mental health issues. Another set of projects, so another two, so they target children and young people. Here the budget is a bit higher. So there are two action grants stemming from the Work Programme 2022 for 7 million euros together. For the first one, Ice Hearts Europe. So the coordinator is an international sport and culture association. Based in Finland, and the aim of this action grant, actually a project, is making the link between physical activities for children. You can see in the picture children playing sports and their mental health. So basically makes the link between sports, the children they can do, and their balance and mental health. The second project is Let's Talk About Children. The coordinator is University of Turku, also based in Finland. And this grant is developing and supports an adoption of the best practice Let's Talk About Children in local and national strategies and policies. So as you see, both these projects, the coordinators are based in Finland, and then they have the focus on children and young people's mental health. Here we have 4 action grants dedicated to improve and support mental health of displaced people from Ukraine. So here it's important to highlight that in the wake of the Russian aggression against Ukraine, the Commission amended the Work Programme 2022 and introduced a dedicated call for action grants promoting the mental health of Ukrainian displaced people. And following that call, we ended up funding these 4 projects, as you can see on the screen. And this led, so these 4 projects, they are active in 10 countries. And together they are supporting more than 5,000 adult Ukrainians and people displaced from Ukraine, out of which 2,000 are children and 3,000 are professionals. Now we move to the Synergies developed by HaDEA on mental health. So of course, as we discussed yesterday, and as also Marina highlighted, and ensuring energies between relevant projects and initiatives is essential to avoid overlaps and to ensure the best use of resources. So member states and stakeholders can benefit from each other and from these synergies. So the first slide, so here I wanted to highlight that Synergies to support mental health of displaced people from Ukraine. So the 4 projects I just mentioned earlier, and also a contribution agreement with the International Federation of Red Cross. So this is a contribution agreement, is a type of funding instrument that is used by the parent DG, by DG Sante, to fund, to support policy relevant work of certain international organizations, like in this case, International Federation of Red Cross. So what is the link between the 4 action grants and the International Federation of Red Cross, this contribution agreement? So both of them, they address mental health issues of displaced people from Ukraine. And the countries where the 4 projects are based are also members of the International Federation of Red Cross. And then also you can see on the slide the resulting synergies. And it's important to mention the first one, expanding and strengthening the network of Ukrainian and Russian-speaking mental health professionals, because these 2 languages, they are used widely still in Ukraine. If we now move to the next slide dedicated to synergies. So here we have the synergies to boost mental health across the different public health domains. And here the budget is it's more significant, because we have 86.5 million euros altogether. Why? Because we have 2 joint actions with a high budget. So the first one is Mentor, stemming from the work program 2023, that works in synergies with 8 action grants, also stemming from the same program for 4.5 million euros. And those grants together, they address mental health in line with the approach and objectives of the Commission communication on comprehensive approach on mental health. And then there are synergies developed between the Joint Action Mentor and the Joint Action Prevent NCD. The Joint Action Prevent NCD has a higher budget. Why? Because of course it has a wider scope. So it addresses, a high number of health determinants, and one of those health determinants, is the mental health. And here is the link between the joint actions. So they coordinate and they work together to make sure they complement and they don't and they cooperate, and to avoid also overlapping activities. So another slide dedicated to synergies is focused on mental health conditions for older adults, for elderly people. And here we have a joint action, JADE Health, on dementia and neurological diseases. This one I said it's in preparation because it's in a grant agreement preparation. So we need to sign it by the end of this year. And this joint action has synergies with an action grant, Care for Elders, as you can see. And they are targeting the same beneficiaries, elderly people, and they are supposed to support those vulnerable people to cope with mental health conditions. And also it's important to mention that one of the participants in the joint action JADE Health is Alzheimer Europe. So now we look at the future. So on future synergies to support, again, vulnerable groups. Here we have a joint action stemming from the current work program 2024. As you see, the budget is quite significant, again, 6 million euros. This one is in preparation, so it's open for submission. So we are still expecting the proposal to be submitted by the relevant competent authorities of the member states. And this joint action goes in parallel with the call for action grants, so a competitive call, also with the same submission deadline, January 2025. So in case you are involved in preparing these projects, a kind reminder when the deadline is, so don't miss it, and also don't underestimate the technicalities and also our grant system. So don't wait until the very last day, because the system might get blocked, and then it will be a shame to have the proposal prepared and not be able to submit it. We had cases in the past, and unfortunately we cannot do anything, because that's a procedure and it's equal treatment, and we cannot extend the deadline for one participant because this will be unfair treatment. So it's important you keep this in mind. So these two actions, two grants are very important in the area of mental health. Also the focus on synergies. So in HaDEA, we organized in October 2023 showcase on mental health. And there we targeted the synergies between EU-funded projects on mental health. So we went beyond the EU4Health program. So we had 4 programs involved. So EU4Health, then the Legacy, the third health program, Horizon Europe, and also the Legacy of Horizon Europe, and I mean by that Horizon 2020. So basically, we link the past, the present, and the future. So we taking stock of the results of ended grants to make sure that we use them in the current grants, and also when we design and when we plan for the future grants related to mental health. Also, as you may be aware, so in HaDEA, we support a lot the applicants throughout the processes. So we can find on our website the published calls. So in case you are interested, in applying to some of our calls, and you can go in funding and tenders portal. We also, you'll find also on our website the last info session on new open calls for proposals, the second wave. So the recording is still available in case you want to watch and to understand how we work, what is the procedure, what are the requirements for the operation point of view, for the administrative point of view. So there are questions there, and also the topics are very well explained by my colleagues and also by colleagues from DG Sante on aspects related to policy. And also, in case you want to ask us any questions, you can see the email address on displayed on the slide. And very important, checking the funding and tenders portal. So with this, I reached the end of my presentation. I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Let's wait a bit. Oh, the presentation is there. Good morning, everyone. I am very happy to be here. My name is Sibylle Neimane. I am the head of Scientific Projects Unit at the National Center of Mental Health in Latvia. And we have been given this very great opportunity to be the coordinators of a joint action mentor. What the mentor stands for, it is mental health together. And why mental health together? I think it goes very well with what a joint action is. It is a coordinated initiative in which European member states come together and collaboratively work on health-related projects to really tackle some public health issues. And this is exactly what we're doing in the mentor, working together for promoting a better mental health. So what I have seen before in similar events to this is that everyone usually likes to see the mapping out of the countries. This is like a must in these kind of presentations, just to give the common understanding of who is involved and what is the overall scope of the project. And we have 43 partners from 20 countries. And I must say, it's quite a lot participants within the project, within the budget that we have as well. 6 million euros that is contributed from European Commission. And as it was mentioned before, we started just really recently, September 1st. Our project is ongoing for 3 years, but I have to say, we have been working quite a lot to get up until this point as well. So it doesn't really seem like the project just started. It feels like we did it quite time long ago when the project proposal submission was started. So what are the main mentor project aims and goals? And I have to say that from the very first day, we saw the need to address a wide variety of scope of mental health issues and topics. So what we are doing, we are promoting mental health by sharing experiences both from the political to the clinical scope to really gather initiatives related to mental health policy context and to be used in everyday life in the clinical scope as well. And of course, we are doing that with incorporating evidence-based best practices and also adapting different initiatives to really achieve this long-term sustainability of promoting mental health and well-being. And what is also important for us to do that both to individually and the population level. We really believe it is important to cover as wide a scope as it is possible. Just a little bit getting into the structure of how we work. This is, I think, another thing that is very important in every joint action on how you work and collaborate. And so we decided to have 6 work packages. 2 of them, the work package 5 and 6, are the technical ones. 1 to 4 are the mandatory ones as usual. And of course, the most of the work is happening in the project core team. For our project, those are work package leaders, co-leaders, and task leaders are involved as well. And then, of course, we have different boards that are involved and will be involved to really maintain the path that we have planned. So the work package 5, the first of the technical work packages, it is really designed to meet the overall mentor aims for sharing these experiences from policy to clinical and from individual to population levels. And one of the first things we're going to do is mapping and implementation of mental health and all policies. That was also mentioned in the previous presentation, to really develop a flexible methodology that can be used to member states at national and regional levels as well. We will also work on supporting prevention, promotion, actions and initiatives targeted at young people in community settings and especially vulnerable groups in those. We also find it very important to involve people with lived experience and tackle stigma and discrimination. So we really have developed quite work to do in regards to this joint ownership of people with lived experience in mental health policies. And another initiative is integrated care pathways for promoting social inclusion and quality of life for people with mental health disorders. And I think this is a very interesting and new approach. We have high hopes for this as well. And of course, the outcomes of Work Package 5 are really to support the policymakers at national and regional levels to really understand why mental health in all policies is needed and why it is important. And also give, of course, tools how to incorporate that in the practical life. And of course, share methods and best practices to identify communities and really focusing on the vulnerable groups, addressing stigma and addiction as well. Also provide recommendations for stakeholders on how to really involve and better include people with lived experience, and offer care pathways for person-centered care for people with mental disorders through this personal health budget methodology. The Work Package 6 is more devoted to the digital tools and solutions for improving mental health across Europe. And the global goals include improving access to different digital interventions, of course, support and include vulnerable groups and reach them. Also enhance early detection, to give the first interventions for people with mental health disorders. And strategic approaches, for example, are leveraging modern technology and also sharing and developing these evidence-based resources for a wider scope of people. And main activities, of course, include identifying and sharing the good practices, also adapting and piloting some of the tools that are already there and scaling up, and also developing and piloting online self-report tools for mental health evaluation purposes. And so the outcomes of the Work Package 6 are expected to have this online repository for mental health and promotion assessment, also provide stakeholders recommendations for action against early problematic digital technology use that is devoted to very early aged children. Also, piloted digital self-report tools for adverse childhood experiences for youth mental health. We think this is a very important milestone result. And of course, pilot study mapping youth mental health across countries, also including displaced persons from Ukraine. So we have additional initiative to really pilot and have the assessment of the mental health within the youth of displaced people from Ukraine, and also a validated digital self-administered version of composite international diagnostic interview, and to really get more, respondents, and we hope that we can validate the self-reporting tool to really use it in the future. And so, of course, all the long-term achievements involve enhanced capability to identify people at risk of mental health, of course, the improved accessibility for interventions, especially among the marginalized groups, and of course, scaled up and affordable interventions across the member states using digital tools. And so how do we ensure the overall compliance and involvement of the participants? So we meet every 2 to 3 weeks to really stay on the path and to go according to the plan, and really to monitor the activities. And of course, we're also planned the interim progress reports and also the interim project budget report every 6 months to really be on very close attention of how things are moving forward and budget-wise as well. And of course, the monitoring and evaluation of all the activities. And we also believe that sustainability really is the key, and to ensure that no overlaps with other projects are occurred. And so about the sustainability aspect, I must say that we plan to really build on the previously established boards, let's say for the stakeholder involvement, and to some extent for the member state policy committee as well, because we have some partners who have been involved in the previous mental health project that just recently finished, Joint Action Implemental. And we believe that there can be not only synergies regarding the content of the tasks and work packages, but also the expert groups and stakeholder involvement. Also involving coordination and sustainability from the previous joint actions or sustainability package, the work package 4, have also planned to really have maybe a small network at first, but to really involve the sustainability people from different joint actions to really see how are you ensuring the sustainability past the project closing, and what can be done in Mentor to sustain in a similar way. What also is interesting aspect for us, and how I mentioned that in a joint action implemental as well, there are participants who are participating in Mentor and who will be participating in the next joint action as well. So now we see that we are the Spain, the Biosystemac, who are the leading of work package 3, the monitoring. They are to be the next coordinators for the mental health joint action regarding the vulnerable groups. So I think we will have the straight synergy right there along the way, right from the start, because we are very close in collaboration right now. And so I think that is a great way how to continue on working the activities that will be built in the Mentor and then forward in the next joint action. And of course, collaboration with different ongoing joint actions who are maybe not very much related to mental health. The Prevent and CD, of course, is our first pick. We saw some synergies already there regarding the mental health and all policies approach. So that is where our linkage is very strong. But we also saw some possibilities to synergize with a joint action EU Can Screen. That is about a cancer screening project, and we see that there are possibilities to, how to say, synergize on coordination level as well, and to see how are you planning the initiatives, actions, events. We can share experiences regarding these levels as well, and also the involvement of participants and just everyday today communication as well within the teams, and I think that is another ground where to build the synergies. And so we think that establishing a coordinator network is a necessity. It would really be a great initiative for the future joint actions as well, because then you have this possibility to reference the previous coordinators and to speak with them and know their knowledge and experience, and they can really help you in moving forward. The same goes with the sustainability, because as we believe the sustainability is the key, then that is something that could be worked more together as well. For some of the lessons learned up until this point, have to say it is quite challenging to include all the activities for all target groups that have been mentioned in the call as well. And sometimes you must narrow down target groups to really tailor the activities to them and to get the initiative that works for this specific target group. And online tools are really an easy, accessible tools to information on low cost. So that is why we decided to move and go forward with digital tools in the work package 6. Also, the mental health and health policies and the promotion prevention activities and other guidelines and methods, we are really trying to tailor them to be used beyond the lifespan of the joint action mentor so that they really live their life moving forward as well, not when the project is completed. And of course, user-friendly tools and screening instruments are essential also to cover a wide scope of people. And sharing experiences, learning from other projects, and collaboration with HaDEA and DG Santé are really crucial. And we are lucky to have people who are very welcoming and helping you to really achieve the best you can. So we are grateful for that as well. And to finalize, what can be done to improve joint actions even more? As I mentioned, sharing experiences is the main thing, and I think that is the most important one. So the coordination network, I think that is something that could be done and built for the future to see guidance. And also prepare coordinator or work package leaders with the learning workshops at the start of the project proposal submission phase, because even though participants are involved in different joint actions and they have experience with being participants, but not always they have experience of leading a work package. So that is something that could be done as well at the start of the early phase of project submissions, to really just learn on what is expected and what are your tasks to do within leading a work package per se. And of course, proactive involvement from the participants is very crucial. I think at some point to all of us, it is relevant question of how to ensure a proactive involvement from all the partners. In our case, from all the 43 partners. So that is quite challenging as well. And also, I think providing coordinator with additional funds would be a very reassuring motivation for participants to really take on this very serious, challenging, and important role that requires a lot of resources and work. I think providing coordinator with additional funds, either in the project development phase or when the project has started, to maybe cover more of the funding rate. And to finalize, I really think it would be great to develop a joint action repository with web pages, with resources, deliverables. Yesterday, this got a lot of voices as well. A lot of the panel discussion participants were in similar ideas. So I think a joint action repository is a must. And just to finalize, our coordination team from National Center of Mental Health, as you can see, we are quite compact. There's not a lot of people, but we are working very effectively. And also Fabio from Promise here, yes, thank you for your involvement and being a co-leaders as well. I think we have very good synergies between Latvia and Italy at this point. So I think we have all the ideas to work further in a very good way as well. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sibilla. And well, we have time, 10 minutes of questions from the audience. Of course, there are a lot of thematic themes which were presented by the two speakers. And so one of the main point is, you know, there is HaDEA here for us. So how do you ensure that to continuity and among between the different, that's my question, different parallel or sequential joint action? Because our experience, and Sibilla was very nice to show this point, was to keep into account what the previous joint action implementer has already done, while trying to include some of the work they have done within Mentor, but also now there's a new joint action starting. So there are strong overlapping, especially when we refer to the best practices. And so what is the degree of influence that they may have on the organization of the consortium of the next joint action, taking into account that some of these best practices we can optimize if they are somewhat the same or addressed by Mentor, or on the contrary, it's better to cover aspects which are not covered by the Mentor joint action. So I think is a matter of topic of discussion. Anyway, these have to be built in continuity. Otherwise, we have to take the risk to lose money, time, and energies.
Thank you very much for this interesting question. So we are doing many things in HaDEA to make sure that there is a continuity of our work. So first of all, we implement the U4Health program, and as I mentioned earlier, we do this via annual work programs. So in every annual program, of course, there are different topics, different strands, and mental health is one of those topics. So in every work program, we have different action grants or joint actions. And then, of course, when they at the programming level, when they are designed and they are put in place by DG Sante, because DG Sante is our parent DG, and they are responsible for the programming, for adopting the work program, and they are doing that in collaboration with the EU member states. And as we know, the beneficiaries of the joint actions are the EU member states. So there is a continuity which is ensured at programming level, because of course they know what happened before, they know what was done in the previous work program, so they make sure there is a continuity but without overlapping. So we have done that for mental health, you know, with various actions in work programs 22, 23, 24, as I presented earlier. And also it's important to know that sustainability, as Sibilla also nicely showed in her slides, is one of our mandatory work packages. And what does it mean? Of course, as she explained, this is a key element. And then the objective is to make sure that there is collaboration between the past, present, and the future, and there are no overlapping activities. And also another tool that is used at commission level, so mainly DG Sante, there is an expert group of public health. So there, DG Sante organizes meetings on a regular basis, and who are the participants? Of course, experts from the EU member states, and there they share best practices, they share experiences from the third health program, because many of them, you know, they have experiences before EU4Health program, so from the legacy. They also say, okay, what works, what doesn't work, they give advice. And then especially they share knowledge and also, as I said, different tools and best practices. So there is a constant dialogue that is happening there on a regular basis. And I think it's a very good forum for them to exchange and to make sure that they are cooperating in a sustainable way. But also, as I also mentioned in my presentation, I think Sibylla also said so, there is a cooperation. It was a cooperation between Mentor and Joint, which is 2023 work program, and then Joint Action Implemental, which is part of the legacy of the third health program, because of course they address the same topic. And so maybe Sibylla can tell us how this cooperation went with the Joint Action Implemental to avoid this kind of overlapping and to maximize basically the impact of this new joint action, which continues the work that is done by Joint Action Implemental. So thank you.
Thank you for the question. Yes. The collaboration with Joint Action Implemental and Vasileia Conte, the project manager, the coordinator. I guess we met almost exactly a year ago in Brussels, where you had this event, I think, on the 9th of October that you mentioned in your presentation. That is when we met, and she was so kind and started just giving me every experience from her on what to do better and how to look on the submission document and how to really, what to focus on there and what to not focus, and maybe what to include and how to work with stakeholders and how important it is to involve them, and the overall, the implementation strategy, the project handbook. I mean, she was like an open book and ready to share everything. And so it was so welcoming. And I am really, I am glad for that. And I really appreciate her support in this. And also the work, even though her project has ended, let's say, we are still in communication, and we will include her in our stakeholders as well. Stakeholder forum, we call it in our project. And I think involving the previous coordinator is a very good idea in ensuring the continuity, the sustainability, and not the overlaps, but maybe to build on the previous achievements. So I think our collaboration will continue more in the next years. And thank you, and I thank her for willingness to be a part of the next joint actions as well. So I think it's an important aspect as well.
Any other question? I lost several. Sagrun, please.
Hi, thank you for the excellent presentations. And I found it really useful to see an overview of what HaDEA is sort of funding, and I thought that was really interesting. Is there anywhere that, is there a web page? Can I see this anywhere and more information about these projects? And as well, like Sibylla was saying, a repository, is there anywhere where we can see sort of previous joint actions and upcoming joint, where's the best way to get sort of an overview on this? Yes.
Yes, there is a way to find those projects. And of course, if you are searching for a specific topic, like in this case, mental health, so I would say the best way to do is to check the funding and tender portal. And there, you have different, I would say, tools. For example, you can search for a partner if you want to build a consortium, or if you want to see what was done before, which joint actions or action grants that were adopted in this specific area. You just choose mental health. And then you will have a list of all the projects that we funded in HaDEA from EU4Health, but also the legacy, the project from the legacy from the third health program are listed there. You can click and you have you have the budget, you have the beneficiaries, you have all the list of the objectives. So it's an excellent database, and I strongly encourage you, to use it. That's why I had my slide support to applicants, because of course we get this question a lot, saying, okay, it's interesting, there are many actions in the work programs, but how can I build a consortium? Where can I find partners? Because everyone, of course, not everyone is experienced. We are aware that it's a challenge, to write a proposal. There are different administrative and operational requirements. And then, for the first time might not be, some obvious. So that's why we build this database, which is publicly widely available. And then in every presentation we deliver on any occasions, we refer to that. It's a funding internal portal, and you have different tools, search tools that you can use, and you can link the past, the present, and of course, for the future, you look in the work programs. So that would be my advice. And of course, if you want to see the latest information, the very, very latest information, we always do these info sessions when we launch a new call. And then we keep them for a while on our website. So you can also watch the recording, and also you can write to us to the email I mentioned on the screen.
May I comment on this as well a little bit? I think what could be also beneficial for us is to have such leaflet that we have shared right now about the Joint Action Mentor. I know other projects have similar leaflets as well about very brief description of what their project is about. And I think if those leaflets could be gathered and then posted in one space, then we can also see a very fast and brief way what are the projects about, how to contact them, what are the linkages, what are other similarities. So I think that would be a very usable tool to just have this first image of the different projects.
Yes, I'm Albert from the JACARDI Joint Action. So mental health, or the lack of mental health, and then cardiovascular disease and diabetes are strongly related. So how do you imagine cooperation between the upcoming mental health joint action that will be led by Biosystem and, for example, JACARDI, right? Because these are really strong links between the disease areas.
Thank you for the question. Well, I think the first step is really to contact each other and get to know each other, and to see a brief, let's say, even a description of what are the tasks and where we can really see the synergies of where we can work together, or maybe have a similar methodology on how to improve some of the aspects. So I think that is just to be started with the communication, and then we can come up with the solutions to work further. So very open. Yes.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I really appreciated your presentation, and I represent one of the action grants. I might note that maybe there is no direct connection with mental health as such right now, but what you said was a lot of practical information, and what was followed is as well this readiness to help us. So a lot of, I hope that I'm speaking on behalf of few other organizations. A lot of us are daring to do it for the first time, and we are learning as we go. And a meeting like this offers a platform for us to, between consortia and action grants, to share and learn, not only successes, but also things that don't go well. And I think my question/proposal would be to have more practical meetings to learn about things, because sometimes it's how we report, how we connect. Everything sounds great until it sounds great, until it's not great. And I think we need more help on the practical level. And what you've presented in your consortium was very, very nice in terms of demonstrating collaboration. I think I would have benefited as a consortium lead to be offered support on a practical level on a lot of things, because there's a lot of unknown. And I know there are manuals, but when something is 50 pages long, it's not a manual anymore. So thank you.
Thank you so much. May I start, maybe? Yes, thank you. I really feel you, and I hear you, and I have the same emotions. I have to say, when we started a year ago, it was a roller coaster for us as well, because we really had to understand the joint action from the ground. And I think what really helped us was the collaboration with the Joint Action Implemental, or HaDEA officer also helped us and guided through these different financial aspects and the documents and a grant agreement aspects and things like that. And of course, we also learned a lot just from all the information that was out there. Our participants, Italian colleagues, also supported us and gave their experience. But I hear you, and I think this is really important to start having these workshops for the coordinators and work package leaders to really give the first motivational push as well, and to give some practical background of how the things will work moving forward. So I think that is a great way to start. Yes, so we can all ventilate at first, you know, and then get all our emotions out and then move forward with on a practical aspect.
No, very briefly, because I wish to complement. I'm aware also of the time, because we have a full agenda ahead of us. No, I would like also to mention the national focal points. You know, because in each member state you have a national focal point, and they are the memory also of the programs. For example, you know, Giovanni Nicoletti, everybody, most people know him. So he has been, you know, he knows very well the third health program, the legacy, and also all the EU4Health, you know, work programs. So there, if you are in search, you know, for partners, for experiences, I advise you also to liaise with your national focal points, because they receive, you know, a lot of information from us, and they're aware, of course, of all the actions, all the calls that we launch. Because as HaDEA, of course, with my team, we are available to support you, but we cannot support you when you prepare the proposal, because, of course, we are the granting authority, and then we need to assess those proposals, and then we have an evaluation committee, and we have to make sure that, you know, equal treatment is ensured, and then all the right proposals, they are funded. So once you reach the grant agreement preparation, of course, we are there, and we support you, and at financial and operational level. But before that, in the phase of preparing the projects, there is not much we can do. Of course, we have our info sessions, we explain different tools, you know, accesses. But there I would also like to highlight, as I said, the role of national focal points. Thank you.
Close?
No, and we just for people online, we are going to reconnect at 11:15. Okay.
Sorry to keep the microphone just for the colleagues on national focal points. We meet during the coffee break here outside to have a small discussion on our future project. Thank you.
Test, test. Yeah. May I invite everyone to take a seat, please? Let's have a seat. Please take a seat so that we can start. Thank you very much. So welcome back after the coffee break. I hope you all had enough caffeine to go through the second part of today's event. I'm Ugo Vernacci, I'm assistant to the director of HaDEA, and I'm pleased to be the moderator of the second panel discussion devoted to mental health. We are basically following the same structure of yesterday. So we had the pleasure to have a plenary session set by my colleague Florina, but also Sebela and Gemma on setting the scene on mental health in EU4Health program. And now we actually deep diving in understanding and drawing synergies between the two EU-funded programs on health, notably, of course, EU4Health, that we learned a lot on the implementation of best practices, and of course, Horizon Europe, the health part, which gives much more importance to research and innovation. Of course, we have a great panels of 4 speakers, 2 representing the EU4Health program and 2 speakers presenting actually Horizon Europe. And I start with Sorun Osk Larus-Dottrin. I hope that I've mentioned your surname well. She's a project manager at the Directorate of Health of Iceland. Iceland is, as you might know, an associate country to the EU4Health program. And she represents today here the Joint Action Prevent and CVDs, which has a substantial EU contribution of 76 million euro. It's an interesting joint action because it's also coordinated amazingly, I must say, by Norway, which is another associate country to the EU4Health program. So very welcome to you, Solrun, and we will hear from you in a moment on what Prevent and CVDs is doing, because this is an interesting joint action that was mentioned before. It's not looking at mental health as such, it's looking at the health determinants for non-communicable diseases and notably also cancer, but then you take this mental health perspective and angle, which is very much appreciated because you really look at that in an holistic manner in all policies. Then we have Jens Sile, who is a psychiatrist, head of the National Center of Mental Health Scientific Institute in Latvia. You, of course, represent a joint action that we all know very well by now after Sibylla did an amazing presentation of the components and the work package structure of Mentor. So, of course, from Julian, we will try to better understand this togetherness, this link that was mentioned in the panel plenary between the individual and societal level, and try also to understand how the member states are capitalizing on the investment that was done at the EU level in deploying this best practice that you selected from, actually, as you said before, the proposal stage. And then, of course, we have 2 different projects from the Horizon Europe program, because we want also to give visibility to the different instruments within each program. So we have a coordination and support action called Brain Health, and here we have Hella Lichtenberg. She's actually, of course, working the German Aerospace Center. Hella has made integration part of her profile, if I might say, because she actually integrated different hats that she wears, because she's also a very senior representative of an Horizon 2020 ERA network on Neuron, which at ERA co-fund instrument is creating a network of funding around the neuroscience research. So we will also learn from you, Hella, how a CSA, a coordination support action, might become actually, because this is the aim of the CSA Brain Health, a European partnership on the same topic. Last but definitely not least, we go to a more traditional project, allow me to say so, Nicolò Carporale, postdoctoral research associate at the Neurogenomics Research Center at UMA Technopole in Milan. You represent the research and innovation grant in Horizon Europe called R2D2MH, which is focusing on a very important cross-longitudinal approach on young individuals with neurodevelopment disorder, in particular looking at autism. And this is a project coordinated by Thomas Bourgenon from the Institut Pasteur, Université Paris-Cité. So I'm very happy to have the four of you. And as a first question that I would like to address to you is the twofold aim of this panel discussion, which is, on the one hand, understanding how mental health can actually act as a glue between linking physical and mental health from integrated care, but on the other hand, how can integrated care create a space in a vacuum that was left for a very long time for mental health as such? So I'd like to start first with the two, let's say, representative of this big consortium of member states. Notably, first I'll give the floor to Sorun and then to Yin. Mic on, please. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So as you said, the focus in Prevent NCD is prevention. It's not integrated care as such. And we're not tackling the NCDs one by one. We're taking a systemic approach, looking at it from a broad perspective. And as you say, and as was mentioned, as Gemma said this morning, you know, mental health is an integral part of health, and we can't really separate it. In Prevent NCD, we do have a separate task on mental health in all policies. Mental health is a small part of it because we knew one other joint action was coming, focusing specifically on mental health. But I also think mental health is all of it, because we are addressing the determinants of health, and they all affect mental health, and mental health affects all of them. So mental well-being, we're focusing on sort of prevention and mental health and well-being, and that can, I think, both be viewed as a determinant of health and as an outcome. So I think from the project perspective, we are looking at it from a very broad, holistic point of view, moving away from the silos, moving away from mental health being just a part of the healthcare system and the healthcare sector. So that's sort of,
I think that's a very good point also that relates to one of the questions of yesterday on prevention, because often mental health is looked at the cure level where we are managing the disease, but as you right now said, it's also during the prevention. And Lorena mentioned the cancer call we had last year was really looking at how cancer patients that are discovering the disease should be accompanying this mental health parcours. So that's a very relevant point. And I'm wondering, Lynn, how do you see this prevention embedded in the mental health debate in your joint action mentor?
Oh, thank you for your question. Actually, in Mentor, we have very practical interventions, because as you mentioned, we very often see mental health something we should cure. But from the point of clinician and front of medical institution, we can see that our outcomes as medical outcomes are very influenced by these all other determinants. For the social aspects, some kind of educational aspects, support system aspects, and we cannot just put emphasis on the medical sphere, on the medical workers. Of course, in the perfect world, it would be that someone else did this integrated part, and we psychiatrists just sit in our office and look how it's great turned out, but it's not perfect world. This is why we stepped forward in our mentor project. Actually, all working packages are some kind devoted to step into this integrated part, to keep as a nuclear our medical needs and what we can do in medical sphere, but all other things are just about inclusion, about social needs, about, their fundamental well-being.
No, I think that's a very relevant point, Lynn. Thank you very much. And it goes back, I love how we can do in the second day a bit of back and forward to what was said yesterday in the plenary when we're talking about integrated care across primary, secondary, tertiary, and community-based. And you rightly said now, draw the line on the fact that psychiatrists and psychologists, the therapeutic part cannot just be in their ivory tower detached from, trainers, educational support systems. So I think, as you rightly said, the two things go hand in hand in prevention for mental health. Now, I look at HaDEA because I think your expertise and experience is quite broad enough to make this link on transitioning, allow me from a very strong member state perspective, what is done at country level, to what can we do more at the EU research and innovation perspective on neuroscience to encompass this integrated care and mental health?
Well, Florina this morning has mentioned a definition from the World Health Organization, and we have adopted a bit of another definition by the World Health Organization for the future European Partnership on Brain Health, and I'd just like to briefly cite that. So the WHO definition on brain health is the state of brain functioning across cognitive, sensory, social, emotional, behavioral, and motor domains, allowing a person to realize their full potential over the life course, irrespective of the presence or absence of disorders. So for the future European Brain Health Network, we have adopted that definition that allows us to take the clear bridge between the two silos of neurological and mental disorders, and to bridge these silos of two in the past, complete different research areas. From that, I would like to very briefly give you a bit of a background. The Coordination and Support Action Brain Health is an instrument that is preparatory for this future partnership. And it resides on two existing networks in the past. That is first Neuron, that's an ERANET network since 2004. So the ERANET is now in its 20th years of funding. We are a network of funders. So we do joint transnational calls for research, both in the neuroscientific and in the mental health sector. And the other network that comes under the umbrella of the CSA in preparation of the partnership is the joint programming on neurodegenerative diseases, because we should not forget that several states of, for instance, depression always go concomitantly with Alzheimer's or with the vascular dementia, which is just another symptom. And on the other sector, because we have mentioned neurodevelopmental disorders, I like to recall that in the past, in the history, for instance, autism was well diagnosed as something like mental retardation. So there is a need also for altering the stigma and altering the cognition of mental disorders. So yeah, in the future EP Brain Health, we want to combine those two areas under one roof and one umbrella. And that is that we first implement a holistic view, and we have some traditional instruments, and we have also some combining elements, connecting elements that are integrating these key aspects of research funding and integrating activities that are more directed towards early career scientists, towards public and patient involvement, towards stakeholders, towards industry. Thank you very much.
That's very good, Hela. I think your point right now draws our attention on another type of integration, not only integrated care between the different levels of primary, secondary, tertiary community, but also integration of the different scientific domains where research and innovation has been working for so many years. And I take your point of integration of knowledge and integration of networks working on knowledge, because you mentioned the ERANET, the JPI, the Joint Program Initiative, which are all very strong networks promoted at the EU RNI perspective, which allows me also to nicely land in an area that Nicolo knows very well, which is the one that Hela mentioned towards the end of her answer about the neurodevelopment disorder and autism in particular. How are you trying to bridge this kind of competencies that Hela has just mentioned within the integration of mental health in public health perspective? Yeah.
Many thanks. I think that the R2D2 project is a paradigmatic example of this kind of integration for two reasons. One is the interdisciplinary approach. So we combine a lot of collaborators from all over Europe, and we are trying to tackling autism from different perspectives. So for example, in Milan, we are studying the neurobiological basis of autism. So we use stem cells and brain organoids that are three-dimensional cultures to differentiate in vitro neural models of the brain to really understand the molecular basis of these disorders. But the key integration in the project is that we combine this kind of approach with other disciplines. So for example, our collaborators that have cohorts and use epidemiology to study associations between the environmental factors that, for example, we were mentioning before, and specific clinical outcomes. And also experts in neuroimaging, such that we can start also leveraging the high throughput imaging data that we can produce by analyzing patients with neurodevelopmental disorders and understanding these neuroanatomical aspects. So I think the first important part is the interdisciplinarity, but the second key point of the project that goes in line with what we are discussing in terms of integrative care, I think, is that we are changing the paradigm to study autism and neurodevelopmental disorders, because we are trying to go beyond the diagnostic categories. So we do not want to use the historical disease versus healthy comparison, but we are trying to study neurodevelopmental disorders according to the reality of its biology, so according to a spectrum of neurodiversity.
Very good. I think that's another, because, you know, for those of us, I put myself, because I had the pleasure to manage some Horizon project working on research and innovation, multidisciplinary seems to be just the buzzwords. But then when you do it and you actually combine imaging, for instance, we have a digital health program, Digital Europe program, sorry, that is looking at digital health. And that part is sometimes not obvious, but that plays also a big component in neuroscience. And I think you rightly highlighted as one of the two aspects. So before turning to the audience, because you will be quite, this is a participatory way of also interacting with our speaker, I want to go back to maybe starting from you, Hela, on something that you mentioned throughout your answer on stigma. So for years before the communication on mental health was actually even adopted last year, we had a debate on linking this physical mental health is not only something nice to have, but it's also something that requires a bit of reflection on stigma. Stigma, because sometimes in Europe in particular, different maybe from the US, was also 10 years ago impossible to say, I'm actually going to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but people actually turning to you and say, oh, really? What's your matter? And, with a bit of a surprise, but which was not just a curiosity, but it was already implying that something is really going wrong with you. While if you would say, I don't know, I have something else, diabetes or, so stigma, of course, apply to all the diseases. I don't want to now starting personalizing physical versus mental, but I just want to draw our attention on the fact that is still quite an issue to bluntly and openly say, I'm seeking help, which is not just my GP, is either a psychiatrist or someone working within the neuroscience domain. So how do you see that, Hela, and what do you think is still needed to be addressed from a research and innovation component, if you want, but more broad as well?
Thank you. That's a very broad question. I like to answer that or try to answer that in two different aspects. First, I think that in most, if not all European countries and beyond, already in the past years, national campaigns anti-stigma have been seen for the major diagnoses like depression and schizophrenia. And that most of the, if not all European countries have also adopted a working policy that means inclusion. So equal rights for employment of handicapped persons, either physically or by mental disorders. But of course, this is on the national level. What can a funders network do? Interestingly, quite something. And that is on the one point that I have two strong collaborators in our umbrella, and that is the European Federation of Neurological Associations, EFNA. This is our long-term partner since Neuron Times. And also we have GAMIAN. This is the patient organization on mental disorders. These are our strong partners from the very first minute. And they had a strong word in formulating our strategic research and innovation agenda, which has just recently been published. And I invite you all heartily to watch our webpage and download that. It's quite a big thing. I think something like 70 pages. So they were formulating aims and goals and objectives and priorities and transversal actions. They always had a saying on that, and they will have a strong role in our governance board for the future partnership as well. So this is on the level of umbrella organizations. On a working level, I can tell you from our past experience that we have been very active in patient reviewer training workshops. So as a funders networks, we do publish joint transnational calls. Like the commission, and they need evaluation, they need selection of the best. And we have not only included ethical committees, we have included patient committees. However, patients, they need to be trained in order to become good reviewers. And since 2020, so in the middle of Corona crisis, we started unfortunately online, I have to say. But we have performed 2-day trainings workshops, and we now have a pool of trusted, confident, well-working patient reviewers who just work as ambassadors, as multipliers, because they have so good experience with us. And on the other hand around, our scientific reviewers, and these are ad hoc panels, they change every year because we have different thematically calls, and the panels are huge and, as I said, different every year and from all over the world. So from Taiwan to Canada, America, South America. Our reviewers come from far abroad and also from Europe, of course. These people see patients working as reviewers with marvelous comments. You cannot imagine how brave they do the work. They read the proposals, and not only the lay abstracts. They read the full proposals. They provide 4 written pages of reviews, and they do marvelous comments on the feasibility, on the relevance of a project. And they have a saying. They have a saying whether a project can be funded or not. And the scientific reviewers do see what the patients are able to deliver and their engagement and their involvement. And therefore, these scientific reviewers, they are clinicians, they are researchers, they are scientists, they are AI specialists. They also work as ambassadors, as multipliers of this really marvelous experience. So I dare say a research funders networks can do something. And these are, of course, activities that we strive to continue in the future partnership.
Thank you very much,
So
Hella.
that was
No, I
like
think
the answer.
it's a very interesting aspect because it complements what Nicola was saying on multidisciplinarity. It's also this multi-stakeholder, you know, in Horizon 2020 started very much. In Horizon Europe has embraced that even more, where the multi-stakeholder are not just the quadruple, quintuple helix, the classic debate, but, you know, patient organization, I think acting as a reviewer is a fantastic way of gathering knowledge and actually deciding, and this is a democracy of knowledge where everyone can commenting on each single domain, and actually act also as an expert by providing different kind of inputs that then the scientific reviewer might take into account in a much more like thorough way to also see how they can integrate this perspective. So I think this is a very important point. Now, looking at both Solrun and Liena, I would like to go back to a point that Hella said when talking about stigma, the so-called campaign at national level. And I'm mentioning that because one of the joint action that was mentioned this morning, JI Implemental from the Third Health Programme, was looking at implementation of two best practice, one from Belgium on the de-hospitalization of mental health care and looking at community level care, but I wanted to focus more on the second best practice, which was the one from Austria on the prevention of suicidal behavior. And Austria did an amazing job in that respect in doing this online and TV campaign, in particular during lunch and dinner time, where kids and young adults could actually look and reflect with their own households while sharing a meal on what are the main actions that should be proposed also at the individual level in order to prevent suicidal behavior. In your joint action, respectively, JI, Prevent NCDs and Mentor, do you really use something to tackle stigma at campaign level? And if not, what other way of communication do you use to reach, for instance, I don't know, the elderly or the disabled people or other groups that are considered normally vulnerable, but looking at vulnerability not in a negative way, but as a spectrum of diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Can I start? Okay. Thank you. Yes, we do. Stigma is a focus in Prevent NTD, but we are again looking at the bigger picture. So we will be looking at best practices of preventing sort of mental health stigma on a policy level, but we will of course be drawing on the very important work that's being done, the EU support package on stigma that's been released, the WHO toolkit on stigma, and we're very grateful that HaDEA has actually led us together and invited us for a discussion with the Public Health Expert Drafting Group on Stigma, I think it's called. We were invited along with Mentor to listen in on their discussion and learn from them, and on to the webinar on stigma that was held on the International Mental Health Day, October 10th. So we will definitely be looking at those campaigns and what's worked. And I know, for example, Denmark has been doing a national, very interesting national anti-stigma campaign, but we will be looking at the best practices on a policy level. And so it's more that they've been sort of the work that's been done, the campaigns will be feeding into our work. For example, we've learned so far that it's very important, the language in the policies, the regulations. And again, we're talking about across sectors, not just the health sector, but we can see stigma embedded in policies in the employment sector. We can do anti-stigma work on a campaign level in the education sector, for example. So there are a lot of different ways. And another very important element that we've been made aware of, that we knew about, but I think it's been made even more, we've become even more aware of it, is the integration of having people with lived experience with us from the beginning. So not just as an afterthought, oh, what do you think about this thing that we're doing, but having them with us from the beginning. And I know that Mentor is doing some work on how to involve people with lived experience in policy making. So I'm hoping to maybe learn a little bit from them on that point.
Thank you, Søren. Actually, yes, I can draw an example how Mentor is working right now. We had our first kickoff meeting. It's not first, it's like, it's always first kickoff meeting. And we divided in working packages, in workshops. And for example, as Søren mentioned, these people with lived experience, inclusion in service design, inclusion in policy making, inclusion in all these like very high service designing process. And there was a room in this workshop with like 30 people from each country. We have like 20 participating states, and all are going around and saying something they think about psychiatry, about mental health care, about how I felt, did I felt listened, how it's working in your country. And there was like 29 people saying that my doctor didn't listen to me. Oh, the mental health care is not available in our country. Oh, they are not including people with lived experience when they designed the mental health care service in X and Y country. And it was coincidence. And everyone is saying, I'm, for example, that and that, I'm public health specialist, I'm a support person, I'm expert in supporting mental health initiatives, I'm from this institution, that institution, and it was completely coincidence. I'm a psychiatrist, and I was the last one to speak. And when I had heard all these, emotions and what they are not listening, they are not including, they are not like doing that. And then I said, hello, I'm Lene, I'm a psychiatrist. It was very nice to listen to you all. And this is what we are trying to do, to make, not to be one side, another side, clinicians against the people with lived experience or against the patients. No, we are all together and we have one goal, how to make the service more available, more friendly, and more effective, which is very, very important. And one of our working packages is all about this integrated care. And there will be a lot of activities for people with lived experience. And how to say, choose the active pilots, or as we say, active experiments. First of all, the best practice should be evidence-based. Then it should be done in clinical environment with the real life, practitioners and with the people who are from this, society, not only driven on the paper. And then we have another very nice paperwork. We will do a very practical work. And then we will listen to all countries' experience, how it's done in your country. It would be possible to do in your country, in your state? Because in Latvia, we had like barriers, obstacles, that, and we overcame them. How it will look in your country. And one of these practical work pilots will be about suicide prevention in a little bit different angle, as I can say. We have this one aim: teach the teachers, teach the support. So we will take a group of relatives who has experienced suicide attempt in their families. Then we will support and teach these relatives to work with themselves, and afterwards to work with support groups. And this is one of the most effective ways. We know about all this self-help, about all these forums, but actually it's now, when we read the literature, it becomes more and more evident that you should teach the support. Then it's going to be more effective and more giving and supporting.
It's another very relevant point on the training of trainers and the update and of knowledge, as because we can all be expert in different fields, but of course then how we upgrade the fields and how we make sure that the dot actually to join the dots is quite relevant. I just want to compliment on something that was shared by both of you. The working group on stigma is indeed a very important piece of work that our colleagues in DG Sante have led, and as in HaDEA, we are actually harvesting those kind of also guidelines and reflections into the calls, because it's not just a matter of chance that you're all addressing equity, diversity, and inclusion, and in particular stigma. It was a specific requirements on certain call on non-communicable diseases, requiring a specific work package looking at equity and health inequality. So sometimes at the programming level, we go back to something that we discussed yesterday morning in the Synergy by Design, that the way we design calls will then allow future cooperation at the implementation level, because also Horizon Europe, as was said also by the director in Nostet, has a co-creation element in all of the main calls where these elements are also reflected. I want to lead and conclude with Nicolò, and I want to be provocative actually, because you're dealing with the neurodevelopment disorder and autism in particular. And yesterday in JACARDI, there was a presentation on inclusive communication and how sometimes you use terms that we are not meant to use. Sometimes we just use them not in a bad way, but just because it's becoming common knowledge to use that experience. And we hear more and more things like how, these colleagues of mine, they don't speak with anyone. They're always closed in the office. They're a bit autistic people. And we sometimes keep throwing terms in the common language that will also come with a strong and heavy background that are very stigmatized, in particular for families that are dealing and caring of these young adults. How do you see stigma in your daily work, both as a researcher, but also as someone that gives policy feedback?
Thanks. I think this is a very important issue of our community. And I think that, again, the R2D2 project is a nice example of how researchers can contribute to overcome this. In our experience, we had interesting events on two different directions. So in the cases of collaborations with patients associations for communicating our research outside of the project. And this is important, as we heard also in the other projects, to spread awareness in the community across different levels. But maybe to share a more personal insight, I think that in the case of R2D2 project, the most interesting and effective innovation was the work that was done within the project, because in this case, we have several patients with the diagnosis of autism and ADHD that participate in all of our scientific meetings. So I think that this is pragmatically allowing us to comply with these problems, including language, as you were rightly referring to as an example, but also things that we may not think without these interactions. Because, for example, me, a neurobiologist that is thinking on how to design a genome engineering project, is rethinking on the key aspect that we want to target, because we really discuss in scientific meetings our aims. And I think that this is an easy example in which, just by really integrating the discussions at the different levels, we can overcome a lot of the stigma and the inclusivity issues that we are still facing.
Thank you very much, Nicola. I think we go back to this very nice way of concluding an answer to what Hela was saying, the patient involved in this hands-in-hands review that scientific work does, and taking patient very seriously as a key component of a research and innovation project. So we're doing quite well with time because we still have 25 minutes ahead of us and there are plenty of other questions. But I would like also to break the ice and hear from you as the audience, and maybe, I don't know if someone can also collect some of the questions coming online, if any. So I will ask you to address a precise question and maybe quickly introduce yourself when you're asking this question to our amazing panelists. Who wants to go and be the first? Is it all clear? I cannot believe that. Yes, please. Can someone give a mic over here? No, for the online people, thank you.
Hello, good morning, thank you. My name is Ariadna Sanz. I'm from the Catalan Health Service, and I'm part of the action grant ResilCard, which is a project that is working on resilience tools to detecting resilience strategies to strengthen the cardiovascular care. So we have been doing the first phase of the project has been a study contacting different professionals among Europe about a common crisis, the last one, so the corona crisis. So we have all very fresh, the limitations, the difficulties, but also what have been changed or what worked to be more adaptive. So the idea is to compile all these tools and provide them for preparedness for next crisis, right? So one of the main topics we detected for the workforce line, which was one of the most affected because of the crisis, was the mental health and the burden and burnout of professionals. And it get to a moment where there have been professionals that have left their career. So they changed their career because of the burnout. So it's a common question for all the table. Do you have in your joint actions, in some of your projects, any line, any consideration on the mental health and also the prevention of mental health problems and burden on health professionals? Because integrated care also is having care of their own system to be able to provide quality assistance. So
it's an excellent question. That's why we also, as a moderator, we need the help of great audience. Anyone else want to jump in before we go to the panelists? Any other burning question? So I think the question was basically twofold. How do we make sure that we address the mental health of the one taking care of the mental health of patient? And how do we address specific issue within that context, which is like burnout, in particular linked to crisis, like the corona one, but could be applied to even future crises? I don't know who wants to start. Yes, Stella, please go ahead.
Well, thank you. I think these are two sides of one coin. We have all learned that during the COVID crisis, or in the follow-up of the COVID crisis, particularly the mental health of our vulnerable group, and that are the youth and the young adults, have to a great extent decreased. And there, the initiatives for prevention kick in, because prevention is there the most important thing. The other thing is diagnosis and, of course, therapy, because in most cases, particularly for school children, very often the disorder or the problems are already manifest. And at least in my country, it is the case that children very often wait for months before they can go into psychotherapy, at least in a stationary or a clinical context. And there, the other initiative kicks in, and that is the support of the caregivers, of the environment, of general practitioners, of kindergartens, of school teachers, of friend groups, of support groups. So these are the main issues that have to be done in a short course, because as we all know, the education of psychotherapists takes a long time, perhaps too long to help these kids. On the other hand, the psychotherapists who see all this burden are going sick themselves. And they get a burnout themselves because it's hard to cope. Even if you have learned strategies, it's really hard to cope with all the burden of disease you see. So we need help there. And there another initiative kicks in what I think in the future will become more and more important, and that is really artificial intelligence. Because as I said, the education of psychotherapists and psychologists takes a long time, but we need in the short term. And unfortunately, AI will faster develop than our educational system. So if, I'm not talking about TikTok because I think that is toxic in its own way. But what I'm talking about are measures and means of artificial intelligence that can be used by general practitioners, by carers, by supporters, by parents to at least detect the disease of, or detect the status, the mental state of a kid, where it is just going, whom is it meeting, is it coming home late or something. And so at least that these instruments in the short term may support both sides. So this is my hope for the future.
Thank you very much, Hella. Before we move on with the answer of the others, I want to go back to the public maybe on this last very point that you made, because it's a very controversial debate, even in the event we hosted in October last year, on how do we use artificial intelligence, because on that, actually, we don't have a clear line to take, I would say, and this is also maybe good that we have an open debate. I mean, in October, there was this huge debate on how do we use ChatGPT for self-diagnosis of certain issues that might be on the cognitive therapy more evident than others. So I'm wondering if anyone in the public, and looking for instance, Gem or other group, would like to comment on this, because the work that you're also doing in Mentor and the reflection you had with certain country, for instance, Denmark, on the IT tools could be maybe useful for everyone. So maybe I do pointing at you, not just because I want to volunteer you, because I just know the journey that you did also when putting these tools together. So maybe we can give the floors.
Yes, I think we are experiencing a shortage of taking care with, especially with the young generation. But because I think we have, before substituting the system with artificial intelligence, you need to, grant the access to cure, because we have to support health workers, especially in the field of child and neuropsychiatry, adolescents. We have a lot of professionists working. I speak for Italy, for my country, but I understand that is a general problem, even those countries who have a universal health system, public and open to the people. We need more professionals working in the systems, but we need also, maybe they may be paid more. I speak for my country, we just have a choice to do. But anyway, apart from this, I think that we need to avoid clinicization of all behavior in children, and we need to think to a stepped graded care since the first years of age, because we can, with promotion and prevention, we can do a lot of work when children are at school and avoid that they become, they develop a disease or an issue. So we need to have a different, an integrated approach, even in this sense. So the response is not substituting the care with artificial intelligence. We need to exploit digital tools as soon as they can approach people to care, but we need the physical contact, especially in very young age, and possibly accessing through the school, through program, through promotion prevention program children when they are still at the beginning of their life, so that the serious problems might be prevented. And so, I mean, yes, digital tools are tools, but possibly we are already, too old to understand the possibilities, but as far as we believe, standing from our data, we cannot address public mental health disorders, especially in adolescents and young age, just with the digital tools they are able to use, because we need something more.
I think this is a very pertinent point, and the fact that a tool is a tool, even if it's digital, it can help reach out so many other professionals that needs help, or kids, or whatever the population vulnerability is. But then, of course, you need someone behind the tool and to digest the data and to recommend the right therapy, as you rightly said. Is there anyone else that has a burning comment on this AI before I turn to the panelists, AI and mental health? I don't see any strong reaction in that. So, but I want to go to maybe the two joint action, because Florina mentioned in one of the portfolio mental health for one tool, for instance, which is used now for Ukrainian displaced people, which is the I Fight for Depression, that was created by the European Alliance Against Depression. And indeed, this is a tool where the cognitive therapists are behind the tool, but this is a self-assessment tool that people with lower level of depression can diagnose themselves throughout a questionnaire that at the end collects data, and there is a kind of a therapist behind the tool that gives some tips on the behavioral side on how to prevent this primary, like early form of depression before the problem may become chronic. Do you see anything like that in terms of digital tools that your joint action is promoting to address either mental health in general, or really the question that was asked before, the mental health of the caregivers?
Go for the digital tools, or? Okay, yeah.
So from our part, our proposal, as it was mentioned, is already closed. And so all actions are already written down. But as we are here for synergies, then nothing is excluded if we have very great idea when we can cross our path. Then, of course, and as you just mentioned, this digital tool in our work package, one of our work packages just devoted for digital tools. We are now focusing more for CD and ACE. CD is a diagnostic interview, very well known, but as we all know, we have differences in adaptation and validation process. And this is very important to have standardized process in a huge platform, 20 states, 43 partners. If we manage to standardize these diagnostic interviews through our partners, it already will be a huge step. The other one, which will undergo this validation and standardization process, will be adverse childhood experiences. If of course, there can be space to do synergy with this depression interview, as you said, but we should have it overlooked. And what is also very important in our mentor, that we are also a little bit tackling this question about problematic use of digital tools. And this is very interesting in mental health. We are trying to reduce the screen time. We are trying to reduce all kind of, things you are doing with your monitors. And then we are just creating all the huge working package just for digital health. So we are aware of that. And our work will be devoted for prevention, promotion, for diagnostics.
Yes, please.
I wanted to address the question about the burnout of mental health professionals, because I think that's a really important topic. We're not addressing mental health professionals specifically as a target group in Prevent NCDs, but there is, because we are at the moment, we are gathering data on mental health promotion in all policies, and a previous joint action that did a similar thing on mental health and well-being showed that there is just in general very little knowledge on what is mental health promotion. So we sort of did a visual representation to accompany our questionnaire, and in that we mentioned mental health promotion as an important
a part of, for example, within the health sector, promoting mental health and supporting mental health workers as an important part. But I also think it's wider than that. So it's you know, what's the, if you're a mental health worker, you know, what are your working hours? How is your job security? And just in general, you know, as we talked about before, you know, social inequalities, if you look at the broader picture, there's so much that affects mental health, you know, access, you know, healthy living, access to housing, security, access to good food, not being polluted on the way home, transportation, etc. And then going all the way back, just looking at the sectors, you know, teaching social and emotional learning in schools from an early age. And then hopefully if we did that in a few years, we would have less pressure on the mental health professionals. You know, so I think yeah, we definitely need to support the mental health professionals, and there needs to be an awareness of the responsibility of the policymakers there. But we also need to think about what happened in our society. Why is everyone? We see mental health declining everywhere, especially for young people. So I think we just need to rethink our communities. And one of the things that we're doing in Prevent NCDs, maybe we can talk about it later, is looking at the well-being economy from an even bigger perspective. So I think we sort of need to rethink our societies, and then hopefully this will not be so much of a problem anymore.
No, I think this is an excellent point. It goes back to your diagram that you have in your description of action, the societal and individual, and the individual as a carer is embedded in the society as a Prevent NCDs. And I recall back in like almost 1 year when we were in Norway to discuss this, you mentioned now mobility, and that time it was said, when looking at the carers' well-being and mental health, we should look also how much time they spend, for instance, commuting from their place to the hospitals where they work. Because in this commuting time, the farther they go to reach the place of work, their mental health deteriorates a lot, because while commuting, they're thinking about their beloved ones at home, or all the stuff they have to do, while they need to arrive at the place of work and be functional and support the mental health of others. So I think the mobility aspect that you just mentioned is one of is pretty important. Yes, Ella, I want to compliment.
I like to ask my dear colleague, do you have in plan to develop a curriculum for the education of mental health workers, or is already something like that existing?
It's not a part of the Prevent NCD, no. I think it's a part of some other projects, but I would need someone else to answer that.
What are you looking exactly at? Because I didn't get the focus.
Term mental health worker, this is not yet an implemented description of medical area. Yeah. So is that a social worker, ethical, what background is needed? And I was asking because I think the concept is very nice.
Yeah.
It will lower the burden.
Yeah.
However, I'm really interested whether there's any curriculum for education available, or is there other common standards for education for becoming a mental health worker?
Yeah, I mean, I can give you, of course, a broader answer. There would be much more other people that have a better understanding of it. But within the EU4Health program, for instance, workforce is one of the embedded strands, as was shown in the thematic strand. And in there is the training and education as a part of the way of new trainings to also look at burnout. And there is in the communication as a comprehensive approach to mental health, one chapter linked to mental health in the workplace, because DG Employment, which is another commission service, contributes a lot also to the communication. So when we will have more specific calls, this is not something that we can answer, but maybe that will come up also in the upcoming years.
Yeah. Something for correction. Burnout is not a certified ICD diagnosis. It's common language for a mild depression.
Good. I think I want to go now to Nicola, because I think they're the caregivers for the, let's say, kids with disorder, mentally related disorder. It's broader, because there are the caregivers that are the professional, but also the caregivers' families, which is another debate that comes also for the cancer mission, for instance. How do you see this, how do we make sure that we do take care of the caregivers as well?
Thanks. Yeah, I think that this is a important and complex issue, and in the R2D2 project, one of the most interesting aspect that we are following to tackle this is, as I was a bit introducing before, the overcoming of the focus on diagnosis. So, for example, there is a whole effort to move from ICD labels to ICF labels that include the evaluation of the functioning of the individuals to better care for them. And this, by definition, needs to be addressed by an integration of carers, so not only clinicians, but an integrated dialogue with families and so on. And if I may, I was thinking to go back to the previous discussion on AI and mental health, because I think that it's interesting to expose this community to a different perspective of what we are doing with AI and mental health, and is the following. So basically, when we think about AI in mental health, we think about applications. So we think about chatbots, so apps that can elaborate text, language, or we think about apps that can improve our monitoring and the reconstruction of images or videos. This is general for a lot of fields. So what's actually happening in molecular biology is that we are also digitizing our biological entities. So if you think about that, we now have millions of genomes sequenced from individuals. We have millions of single cell for which we can measure the transcriptome. The transcriptome is the gene expression level of all of our genes in every cell. So if you think about that, this means that you can follow the same logic of chatbot AI for biology. So if you look behind ChatGPT, what you see is a computational algorithm. So architecture that are taking a lot of data and using statistical model to predict a word after the other. What's happening and what we are contributing to also in the R2D project is that we are trying to leverage the same algorithmic approach, substituting text or image data with biological data. And I think that this is an interesting perspective for all of you, because this is fastly evolving and will soon provide us much better opportunity to connect molecular neurobiology data with clinical outcomes, and so improve, for example, our ability to take care of a spectrum of conditions that is still difficult or impossible to treat for neurodevelopmental disorders. We are still dealing with symptomatic approaches to them. And we hope that with a combination of experimental approaches and computational tools, we are trying to move towards the identification of therapeutic intervention that would change the developmental trajectory that are altered during the development of the brain.
No, I think that's a very important aspect, and I think we all learn in this panel discussion, which I love, because each of you added a new element. And I think this last one, it's also very interesting for the broader discussion in integrated care, because integrated care, we often look at the outputs, and we sometimes tend to forget the processes. And as you said, an output is an output. Let's go back to the app as such, but the process behind can be used for other kind of tools or replication of processes. So I think that's a very good one. We have 10 minutes left, so I want to really have a last question that goes back to the twofold objective of this panel discussion. Ask each of you often in the mental health world, when in particular we talk about mental health for kids, a recurrent question from therapists is, would you live in a dream world? So this is the way I want to ask this question. Would you live in a dream world? What would you change in order to allow, for instance, a member state level for joint action, or at research level in terms of going beyond the silos thinking? What would you really change to make this integration of mental health stronger or more visible or more impactful, or all of that? I give you 20 seconds of reflection, but I think it's basically the gaps. What do you think are the gaps that we need to still address in order to make this integration substantial? Yes, I see you very, very dreaming already.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I have to go for this question. I think I have to go back to what I was mentioning before with the well-being economy. But the thing is, I think in this room and in our joint actions, we have a lot of people with very ambitious, very prepared to tackle these subjects. But at the end of the day, a lot of us are not the people who actually make the decisions for our countries. So if we don't have the policymakers, if we don't have the politicians on board, then we're not going to make a lasting change. And in Prevent NCD, we have well-being economy as a task. We also have it as part of our sustainability package. And we have, I invite you all to the Well-Being Economy Forum in Reykjavik next year in May 8th and 9th. But because, so I think, and I think it was held this year as well in Reykjavik. It's been held every year, and I'm hoping that will continue beyond the project. To make some lasting change. And it's been quite a high level for a meeting every year with, you have policymakers, you have politicians, you have ministers, you have thought leaders, leaders in science, in research, coming together and just thinking about what do we value, what do we prioritize, above economic, how do we define economic growth, what's the value beyond GDP? And I think that's the lasting change I want to see. I want to see us prioritizing sort of mental health and well-being for all, and to see it sort of on a societal level. So that's and then I think we will have the happy, healthy youth that we all want. I think we have a common goal. So that's what I would want to.
That's a very nice way of, from your side to conclude on this paradigm shift towards a different type of economy. Yeah, please, Leanne.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe I should be the last speaker and just repeated all Solon said and then write it down on the wall, and maybe you could take photos and take with you, because I can agree with any word you said. It's so amazing to be here with the people who are thinking like you, and we are doing our activities and we feel kind of good about ourselves. And then we go back to our countries, and if there is no support for our ministries, for our local policy makers, then we are staying in this very bubble with ourselves. And it is lucky for us in Latvia that I'm also advisor of Ministry of Health, but it's so short moment of time in our lifetime when you have this position. And otherwise, I don't even know what would happen. And also yesterday, it was great when you spoke about these focal points. And this is what we are missing, that it's great for us to come here, but please make these kind of workshops and, conferences and meetings with our policy makers. Then it will be a different impact.
Thank you very much. So, Hala, you want to complement? From a more research and innovation perspective, if any?
Yeah, I mean, naturally, my perspective can only that be of research funding network.
Stefan is coming next.
Well, yeah, what a dream world would be that there is no gap anymore between clinical practice and research. Because, I mean, since 20 years, we're striving to close the gap between clinicians and researchers, because sometimes, well, in the beginning, they didn't even speak the same language. And it took the project quite some time. I mean, our basic requirement was always interdisciplinary networks. And because we are publishing courses in the neuroscientific area and also on mental health and on resilience, of course, we need to have clinicians, we need to have researchers, we need to have biostatisticians. But to close that gap, that any clinical researcher can go to its head saying, I have a great idea for a research project and I have the right partners to do that. So, and then there is some free time from the clinical practice to do that research and then to go back. So in a dream world, this fluency between the working levels, and because that would also enhance the implementation of research results. Yeah.
Thank
Dream
you.
world.
Nicola, please. Last but definitely not least.
Thanks, and I can also basically sign to all the parts that were said, and again, totally agreeing on the necessity of fundings for scale up our research need. From my point of view, so a basic researcher, my dream would be that the vision of state approaches to integrated care will go back to look to the future. So trying to address the needs of integrated care, taking as a fundamental pillar the flexibility that we need to stay updated with the innovation of new discoveries that we are making, so that we can act on in the most effective way for patients and for all the individuals.
Definitely, dreaming big requires flexibility, that's for sure, and applies also to research and innovation. Wow, I think I had a great pleasure, and I think everyone can join this feeling to really have this long chat, but I felt like time flew. So please join me to thank the four speakers for their very different perspective from very different projects, from two different funding programs, still agreeing, smiling, and being so complimentary in the answer they gave, which is impressive by definition. So thank you very much indeed for that. Just housekeeping announcement. So I'll now give the floor to my colleague Stefan Hogan for the conclusion for this amazing event in terms of discussion and plenary in the afternoon. As you know, you will have the breakout rooms, which will be actually displayed here and outside, and you will need just to look at the sign which one of the two, one on integrated care and one more specific on cardiovascular disease and diabetes, and one more specific on mental health. So basically you will discuss in depth with your ideas and brilliant contribution what we have been discussing for 2 days. Whatever you say is not going to be lost, because we'll make sure that we take back and report in a formal report of this event once we are back in Brussels, so that, you know, this is a recurrent tradition on Synergies that HaDEA is doing. And my colleagues now, Stefan Hogan, Head of Unit for Horizon Europe, will also draw his own conclusion from this event. Thank you very much indeed to everyone.
Good morning. Yes, I'm Head of Unit for Health Research, and I'm not a specialist in this field, so I'm quite daunted by this task of trying to wrap up this, what has been a very rich session. We had an excellent chair and speakers this morning for the first part, and now these great and very complimentary panelists, and a very good moderator who really extracted a lot out of this panel and out of you. So I took a few notes, and I hope you will bear with me as I try to decipher them. I had to go back to many aspects because we went back from one side to the other, and it was a very rich discussion. And I think the focus, of course, the focus was mental health, and I believe that it has demonstrated EU programs have a great potential and are enabling extensive collaboration to facilitate exchange of ideas on the mental health challenges and to go forward these through collaboration and cross-sectoral efforts. And we see that a lot of these projects, whether they come from the research part or from the implementation, the policy-making side, are very sophisticated collaborations involving very different stakeholders, very complementary stakeholders. And events like this allow us to explore the synergies and try to get more impact out of our action. In her opening remarks, Professor Kalamandrai referred to the ambient feeling that has accentuated mental health problems, especially among young people. And in fact, that was reiterated just now by Sodrun. And this is driving the need for more action, more impact, and hence the imperative to identify and facilitate synergies and avoid overlaps in our efforts, whether it be in research or in policy development, and the transfer of this into practice, which we also just talked about. Florina, in her her speech, reminded us that mental health is a human right. She also gave us an overview of the EU4Health program as the EU's our largest ever health program, where mental health is taking an important place. It's one of the, together with neurological disorders, one of the 5 prioritized disease groups. And in that, I think we also had also a little bit yesterday a bit of the setting this into the policy background. We talked about the EU strategy for mental health, which demonstrate that mental health is seen as a public health priority within the EU. In more concrete terms, again, as mentioned by Florina, in June 23, the Commission released its communication on a comprehensive approach to mental health and which I think underlined this significant policy shift in tackling mental health at EU level. And this communication has a number of flagship initiatives, and I just wanted to mention a few of these, which I think have an importance in the context of today's discussions. I mean, of course, we can refer to the actual effort that is going through our programs, a 1.2 billion commitment through Horizon Europe, through EU4Health and other programs that will be for mental health. These flagship initiatives includes an increased focus on mental health at work, which we just spoke about, addressing stress and burnout or other forms of depression. It foresees support for vulnerable population. The strategy prioritizes support for vulnerable groups such as children, older adults, and those with chronic illnesses, and aims to create a more inclusive mental health healthcare system. And just the last one to mention, and of course this is not exhaustive, it promotes the integration of mental health care into primary health systems to facilitate easier access and reduce stigma, which again we spoke about importantly, and which is very relevant for R2D2MH, which I think was a very good example. The EU approach is based on prevention, access to care, and addressing the social determinants of mental health, with a goal to ensure mental health care parity with physical health care. I only have 15 pages. No, it will go quickly. And we had many examples of concrete action supported by the EU today, with the examples that were, some of which were shown in Florina's presentation, but the concrete projects that we heard about today. And also yesterday, when Director General of DG Santé, Sandra Gallina, mentioned already the tender, the procurement approach to supporting a multidisciplinary training program on mental health care for healthcare professionals and other professionals, such as teachers, social workers, and people working in detention facilities. And in the plenary this morning, Sibylle introduced us to the Joint Action Mentor. Notably, its aims to share experiences from policy to clinical level and from individuals to population levels. Sibylle also gave us many indications of what makes a successful joint action. And in the panel discussions, we had further examples with the joint action on prevent NCDs, which is aimed at reducing Europe's cancer NCD burden through coordinated strategies on health determinants, focusing on effective policies, societal and personal risks. And we had a specific focus, and she also underlined the specific focus on mental health, and underlined that mental health is both a determinant and an outcome in that context. We also had an example of synergies through the Joint Action Mentor, which works to address equitable access to care for people with mental health conditions, reducing the stigma again, reduction of stigma again, recovery and inclusion. And I thank both speakers from Mentor for really giving us great insights into that initiative. And we also had promotion of health, mental health, by sharing experiences from the political to the clinical professional sphere, incorporating evidence-based practices to achieve long-term sustainability. 14 left. Now I'd like to just underline also the contribution of research. We've had through Horizon 2020, which many projects are still ongoing, and Horizon Europe. These play an important role in driving forward mental health research. We know that European programs are not the only game in town, but they do allow scale and complementarity and interdisciplinarity that is rarely possible through national programs. And we had excellent examples in this panel with R2D2MH and the CSA, the Coordination Support Action Brain Health, which is actually preparing this much bigger initiatives. And of course, there are so many other projects which are not presented here. We speak about 76 grants in Horizon Europe alone, and we are only 3 years into the program in terms of projects which have been launched, and already 510 million for brain-related diseases. And we look to the future. We look at the CSA for Brain Health, which is a stepping stone to the much larger initiative, what will be the Brain Health Partnership, which is expected to feature in the next Horizon Europe work program, and which will channel a significant investment from the EU budget, but of course, as a catalyst for an even bigger investment from the member states. And it was interesting to hear also from the partnership concept, which, as we already heard yesterday, gives also the opportunity for research, for smaller research grants, smaller than the Europeans, which tend to be quite significant, quite large, which has its strengths, but also its weaknesses. And I think it's a very useful complementary tool to have the partnerships managing these significant funds, organizing targeted calls, perhaps with a quicker decision-making time to decide on priorities, maybe a more reactive process, and also innovating by involving patients in the review process, which I think is also something we can learn from. European projects such as those funded through the Horizon programs promote interdisciplinarity collaboration, uniting health professionals, scientists, and policymakers across borders to enhance mental health care and other areas, of course. It is of vital importance for innovation and to harness new technologies such as AI and neurogenomics to advance personalized mental health care, as we can witness in projects such as R2D2MH, which is exemplary of the interdisciplinarity approach promoted through the EU programs, and of the possibility of having major impact, in this case, by striving to change even the very paradigm of how we consider autism. And again, it was also an opportunity to discuss stigma. And just coming to to the penultimate section, it was also important to highlight the need for integrated care models, which bring together mental health, physical health, and social services These models can help bridge gaps between healthcare systems and to ensure a holistic approach to patient care. Such synergies across disciplines and also across borders are vital in creating effective and sustainable mental health care strategies that account for diverse populations and needs across Europe. And HaDEA is committed to facilitate this through its day-to-day work and by organizing dedicated events with partners. I also want to recall that both Marina and Florina mentioned in the interventions the workshop that we organized in October of last year as a showcase to start exploring synergies in mental health care, in mental health. I think that was one of the first and important steps, and of course we want to do this in other areas. And I think today we also see the need to continue this work for this thematic area. And we try to, throughout this event, we try to stress the complementarity of Horizon Europe and the legacy of Horizon 2020, as well as EU4Health and the legacy of the third health program. And indeed, EU4Health is supporting coordinated synergies, supporting coordination of synergies between member states and beneficiaries to implement action grants for benefit of all parties involved. And I think with JACARDI, yesterday with JACARDI and THCS, we had a very impressive example of identifying and developing synergies in a very concrete way and with a promising outlook. I very much hope that we can find more of these examples and replicate them. I think that's having two very significant initiatives from two complementary programs actually working together and developing joint work is really impressive. So in conclusion, pursuing cooperation amongst EU member states and associated countries and with other international stakeholders is key to ensure that mental health is not only a priority, but also sustainably integrated into public health systems. The considerable efforts illustrated today represent an important component of a larger long-term effort to transform mental health care across Europe, and an opportunity to accelerate the emergence of synergies in mental health across many policy areas concerned, such as employment, education, research, digitalization, urban planning, culture, environment, climate. And we ended by dreaming, and importantly, of the importance of the buy-in by policymakers and creating the opportunities for this buy-in to ensure that there's an impact of our work. And for research to link the continuing challenge of linking research and clinical practice, as we see from the considerable time it takes very often to bring new findings into practice in the clinic and to benefit the patients. Thank you.
Session side on the right on a whiteboard. If you are in neither session, please come to us and we'll just assign you to either session. You have not just been discarded intentionally. So just please look for us during the break and we'll make sure you're in one of the two sessions. Thank you. Yes, integrated care will be in here, and mental health will be in the atrium, which will be arranged for that. Yes, for any feedback, please just look for us during the break. Thank you.